webinar. First of all, I would like to wish you happy, healthy, productive and fun moments in 2016 and beyond. And let's strive together to build up a strong Triple Helix Association community. If you allow me to say a few words about me, I am the president of the Triple Helix Association chapter of Greece and also the coordinator as of this year of the Triple Helix Association webinars. Allow me to say a few things about the logistics of the webinars for those of you that you are new to the webinar series. The first thing you should know that you can interact using the chat. You can write your questions either during the speeches of the two keynote speakers that we have, and at the end we will ask you kindly to fill up a short poll to make sure of the issues that you will give us in order to improve maybe for the next webinar. Another issue that you should know, that the video recorded, we will record everything, so it will be on the Triple Helix repository webpage, so you could see it later on. For any problems, we invite you, if there are IT problems, technical problems, you can contact Mauro Nasi. If there are any procedural or content-related inquiries, you can contact Maria Laura Fornasi. And if there are any issues, and we are very open for that, for future webinars, topics or speakers, you can contact me. Allow me to say a few things about the Triple Helix Associations for those of you that you are not familiar. Triple Helix Association is a non-profit organization, non-government association with scientific purpose and a global reach. The main scope is to advance the scientific knowledge and practical achievements related to all aspects of interaction between academia, industry and government. That's what we call a Triple Helix. And the purpose is to foster research, innovation, economic competitiveness and growth. We have a range of Triple Helix activities. We have conferences, symposia, awards, networking, so we can learn from each other. We have many publications, academic journals, we have our newsletter, and of course we have exchange of scholars among top universities. Now, why this webinar? First of all is to keep our Triple Helix Association community engaged, to facilitate interaction and learn from each other, and this is the purpose of this webinar, and of course to become a thought leader. And nowadays we know and we cannot have innovation without actually collaborate, and this is the idea behind Triple Helix. We have the university that is actually the knowledge base, has to transform all that and has to be commercialized, and that is actually the industry. Now, few things about the webinar team. We have Professor Harry Etchkovich, that is our president of the association, the Triple Helix Association, and currently he is at Stanford. We have Emanuela Toteva, that actually is responsible for the organizational research committee. We have our core person, Maria Laura Fornasi, that is behind everything. So she is actually the executive director of the Triple Helix Association, and myself chairing the Triple Helix Association webinars. Now, today's webinar is focusing on the session that has to do about Triple Helix interactions and open innovation in Southern Africa. We try to focus on today's sessions, and if you allow me to say a few insights. Regional development is about transforming a region or locality economically as well as socially. The financial crisis has raised critical questions as to whether the current economic and development models are still able to reinvigorate the competitiveness of regions, notably the ones that are least performing, either regions in transition or lagging regions. So there are several questions there. How can lagging regions transform their structures by better exploiting their non-touchable assets? Another question is how to capitalize on the strengths of the existing business ecosystem to support this process. And a further question could be how can regional development policy respond to the challenges of the global informational and networked economy. Traditionally, such co-creation and open innovation to foster proper entrepreneurial ecosystem has been achieved through boosting triple helix university industry government interactions within regions, and this is why I would like to introduce you now our esteemed speakers. The first speaker is Mr. David Cook, and you can see, because I have the slide for a long time, so I won't read his CV, but is a person that has a great experience, and we're looking forward for his presentation. And the second speaker, after, and to remind you, will be 20 minutes speech, and then 5 minutes for questions. And then we'll have our second speaker, Dr. Juha Mittinen, and of course, with the title of his talk, Triple Helix Collaboration in Making Case Studies from Southern Africa. Now, this is the webinar structure. 5 minutes already my talk, maybe I'm a little bit more. 20 minutes presentation will start by Mr. Davis Cook. Then 5 minutes question answers from the public, from you, and please feel free to ask questions. Then we will go to the second presentation, again 5 minutes Q&As, and finally we'll wrap up and we will discuss what was the main conclusions, and then do not forget that we invite you to participate to fill up the evaluation, the poll. We wish you a pleasant session. Let's try to interact and learn from each other. And I would like now to invite Mr. Davis Cook to deliver his 20-minute presentation. Davis, the floor is yours.
Hello. Wonderful. Thank you very much. And of course, thank you for the opportunity to talk about the work that we do and hopefully share some insights about our experiences and successes and challenges here in the tip of Africa. So some of what I'll talk about will overlap with some of the information that Juha no doubt will talk about. We sort of worked jointly on several projects, and so there'll hopefully be some dovetailing of the work that we've done and what Juha has done. So I want to start by giving first a brief overview of the kind of work that we do as an organization, and that will in turn sort of lay the foundations for how and why we've generated the insight around building these triple helix environments and the challenges associated with that. So what is it that we do as an organization? There are many things that we do. You know, we're general consultants, and so we like to joke that we'll do whatever it is that you pay us to do. But the core idea and core business model about what we do is running these challenge-driven or innovation-driven challenges. For those of you who are familiar with an intermediated innovation model like what we have, please bear with me for a few moments. But for everyone else, the process that we run is actually quite simple in theory. The challenges in the actual execution of it. So the idea is that we start by identifying opportunities that might be with private clients, with large corporates, with small startups, with government agencies, a whole range of different organizations and firms. Once we've identified that opportunity that they're trying to solve, that problem that they're trying to solve, we then take this, define it very clearly through some sort of challenge brief, as we call it, and we then subsequently push that out into a large community. Now, I kind of have a small map there of South Africa. The work that we did together with UHA, in fact, reached all the way up into Zambia. So really we sort of pushed this challenge out across the entire Southern African network. We also pushed things out into a global network as well, and around about 30% of our solution network, as we call them, in fact sit outside of these core countries of South Africa, Namibia, and Botswana, Zambia. So what we do is we then take this community, we actively facilitate that they provide a response to us, and then we evaluate those responses, and eventually we select one or more winners in order to take back the original owner of the problem and thus having solved the challenge. Now, the reason that we do this, and the reason this has been successful for us, is because this is a very rapid solution discovery process. These kinds of challenge projects normally last anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks, and we can solve an enormously wide variety of problems. If we look at the specific problems that we worked with in conjunction with UHA, for example, that stretched across banking, across the mining industry, textiles, construction, and renewable energies. And more broadly, we've worked in everything from nuclear power to wave energy to insurance to, there's no end of industries to which we can apply this solution. Now, how do we actually go about doing this? Essentially what we do is create these multi-helix innovation communities. Right, so I'll talk briefly about that then. We've set these communities up across South Africa, Namibia, and Zambia, and I've kind of given you an idea there of four of the primary ones that we've done. In South Africa, we're looking at OpenIX, Connect and Solve, and another project called Solex, while in Namibia and Zambia, the project that we were setting up is called Regional Connect. Now, these communities and these brands, as we like to call them, are composed of a very, very wide number of individuals. You know, we're looking at anywhere from 50 to 70,000 organizations, and they result in some very, very successful technology transfers. So over the last 4 years, we've run 50 projects and sourced in the region of 1,000 different solutions back to these challenge owners. So we're looking at around about 20 on average solutions per challenge. Now, if we look at the breakdown according to which we receive these responses, we see that the largest group are in fact what we term SMMEs, so small, mid-sized and medium organizations. That includes in fact individuals and independent consultants, but you can see that overwhelmingly there is a massive response from your smaller startup and mid-sized firm ecosystem, so around about 3/4. What we then see is that there are about 10% equally split between large corporate responses and academic environments, such as universities and research councils, with the remainder being made up of sort of large public sector organizations. So the success that comes out of these open innovation programs is significant. Out of those 50 projects, we have solved every single one of them. That doesn't necessarily mean that they go all the way through to a deal process. We find a solution, but it doesn't always lead to the challenge owner actually implementing that solution. And that is in fact one of the challenges that I'll talk about in a minute. The second challenge, which also comes out of this, these kind of statistics here, is if we look at the breakdown, we see around about 3/4 SMMEs, 11% academia, 10% corporate, and 6% public. Now, if you look at the way that these open innovation platforms work in the US or Europe, in particular, the academic component is significantly higher. They're looking at around 35% response from your university environment compared to our 11, which is 3.5 times more. Now, this speaks a lot to the underlying difficulty with which to engage across the triple helix environment. There is some involvement, but not as much as we should. So, and I'll talk a little bit more about the reasons that underlie that shortly. So if we then move on, what we see is that there are two broad ways in which these open innovation and triple helix interactions have arisen. Many of the programs that we've run are synthetic, and what I mean by synthetic is that they were created by some sort of government organization or some group who had a desire to force the issue in a particular region. This is in contrast to a more organic development process, which is where the demand has sort of arisen directly out of industry or directly out of an organization that wants to solve problems for itself, utilizing this methodology. So if we look at the organically grown interactions that have come up in South Africa, we have kind of helped establish a brand and a platform around one of these, and that is the Helix brand that I mentioned earlier. So that is a platform that we are creating as a private company, but we're using it to solve our problems and to solicit sort of support from various private companies, etc., etc. So we're just using this as a platform in which to sell and do our business. Now, from our point of view, this is serving a very, very clearly identified market need. There are clients who want to purchase these services, and we have the mechanism, the technology, and the business model in order to do that. So what this means is that, in a very, very traditional kind of economic fashion, there is supply and demand. We have to manage out our operational processes and manage our profit margins and so on in order to maintain ourselves as an organization. We have to spend a lot of time looking at how to improve those processes, continuous optimization, and there's a lot of internal continuous innovation that we apply in order to maintain a competitive position. Now, there's nothing strange about this kind of process. What it has meant, which is quite interesting from our point of view, looking at this if we take a step back, is that we tend to drive towards the path of least resistance. Where is the easiest place for us to find work, for sales, etc., etc., not necessarily where is the best place to promote interaction or to lead to development and so on. So it's very much, in this sense, a selfishly driven platform, and we will go where we find the most success, not necessarily where the most success is to be found in the long term. So we may be, and we recognize this as part of our strategy, we may in fact be restricting ourselves from achieving future benefits through a much more deeply integrated environment simply because we have to address short-term constraints. On the other hand, if we look at the synthetically designed interventions, and this accounts for the other platforms that we've set up, which includes OpenIX, it includes the Connect and Solve platform, and includes the Regional Connect platform. The challenges here are that they are in large part motivated by external factors and external funding. Now, this has some severe constraints and impacts on the way in which we are able to operate. So the reasons why they are created may not necessarily make financial or economic sense in that moment. And again, as with the introduction of any kind of new service into an environment, there's often some sort of government protection that needs to be established in order to support this. So again, there's nothing strange about that. The synthetic programs, particularly with what we've experienced in South Africa and in Namibia and Zambia as well, is that these were the only programs that could start in the environment, and they were absolutely critical, there's no doubt about it. The two most successful were OpenIX in South Africa and obviously Regional Connect in Namibia and Zambia. And both of them enabled us as an organization to promote and build an awareness of the principles of open innovation and the principles of engaging beyond the walls of your organization, of talking to universities, of talking to other parties to solve problems. Now, in order for organizations to take that risk, there needed to be some offset involved, and that was some sort of then subsidization. And that's where external funding was absolutely critical to make this happen. What we've certainly seen is that the transition into a more market sustainable environment has absolutely helped. And now we see that our platform Helix in South Africa is fully sustainable, whereas in other regions that might not yet be the case. So there's another important element here, which is around ownership. Now, I mentioned that we now have Helix as being sustainable, but platforms like Regional Connect and Connect and Solve had challenges in maintaining this ongoing long-term sustainability. Now, the reason for that is because as external funding dries up and as the extrinsic motivation that drives the intent and desire to build up these platforms disappears, ownership needs to move away from the original proponents and champions of the project into people who now have a different agenda and mandate. So the next element then is around this idea of conscious design. So what happens is that if we look at the organic group, sort of like what we do as Reese, we continuously optimize, and this is in our best interests. When you have an external funder, such as a government, they don't necessarily have the same financial motives to optimize the process. And so there has to be a very, very conscious application of this improvement and innovation around the delivery in order to keep it relevant. Having said all of that, and I mentioned this earlier, it is absolutely key that these kinds of groundbreaking sort of icebreakers are put in place. The sustainable business model that we have now would not have been possible previously without an extrinsically, synthetically designed sort of system that was forced artificially. So the synthetic designs can absolutely overcome the inertia of the initial market, who already have a way of solving problems. They already have mechanisms by which they innovate and develop new products and address operational processes. So the synthetic process, by showing them a new way, by enabling them to learn about these processes, is key in getting them to change their behavior, to change their organizational culture, and in doing so, actually start addressing things in a more sustainable way. But so all of this leads to a number of constraints if we look at on both sides. So I'm going to talk first about the organically grown interactions, because in one sense it's a little bit easier to talk about, because there's a very, very clear constraint towards interacting and engaging with other groups, and that is simply a budget. So the numbers that you see there around constraints to engaging in open innovation processes, these are very, very fresh results that have come out. We ran a survey amongst some of our community members that closed last week, looking at their experiences in the open innovation environment over the last year. And the overwhelming majority said that although they want to engage in an open innovation communication and conversation with various parties, they simply don't have the budget to do that. So if we put that aside, because budget is always a concern irrespective of what you do, we then look at some of the underlying or the further reasons around this. So there is a concern around the risk of failure, as in we might start talking to people and start engaging in this process, but it will lead to nothing, and I will then have wasted time in doing that. And that's, was a core issue around engaging with other partners. Lack of competency was a major constraint. And this speaks to the novelty of an open collaborative approach towards engaging with partners that hasn't existed in Southern Africa at all, and it's only now beginning to take part. When we look at the kind of data that came from a year ago, lack of competency and awareness of open innovation was significantly higher. So we're achieving something by talking to people, and if you look at similar figures in Europe or the US, you'll see that number is again lower. So this is a natural progression, and I think that will take place over time. The next item is around a lack of buy-in, and again that speaks to an awareness at a strategic level within an organization about the benefits of an open innovation process. The last item, inability to define need. This is again an awareness and a competency within the organization of how to identify and find challenges that can be solved through a collaborative process. So if one excludes budget, you really end up with only two broad groups of problems in kind of a normal market process where we are. The one is around a risk of failure, and that just speaks to the risk appetite of an organization. The second one, though, is really around a competency and a skills gap that can be developed. If we then think about on the synthetically designed triple helix systems, there's really two issues that are absolutely critical for us. One is that non-market decisions drive the interaction success. What I mean here is that if government is driving a particular program and they decide that innovation is no longer a priority for them, you can very quickly find that your entire program has been shut down. And so there are decisions and implications that you have absolutely no control over that will result in you just losing this project entirely. So as an example, if we looked at the Connect and Solve problem, Connect and Solve was the platform that we built in the Eastern Cape of South Africa, which is a relatively rural province. The premier of the province, who is essentially the political leader within that environment, for a long time was promoting innovation, technology, research and development, and they had started to lose a lot of political support because of other reasons, and all of a sudden innovation, technology, R&D was dropped entirely off the agenda, and a major project was cancelled. There was nothing that we could have done about that, despite the fact that there was a market demand. So non-market decisions have a fundamental impact on these synthetic programs. The second element was around systemic shortcomings that cannot be overcome without systemic interventions. Now, the challenge that we saw specifically in the Regional Connect program, which was across Namibia and Zambia, despite the program itself being very successful in identifying solutions, providing people contact and networks with solutions, the challenge was simply that the actual organizations themselves didn't have the capacity to implement. And that was a training issue, there was a budget issue, there was an understanding issue. So the absorptive capacity of firms in the environment prevented the long-term success of the triple helix interactions. So ultimately, we could have put in place the helix, and the helix talks to each other, but it doesn't actually lead to outcomes because the people themselves who are involved are not able to deliver in the long term. So those are systemic issues that need to be addressed around capacity development, access to resources, access to finance, whatever it might be, which need to be done in conjunction with the actual platform solution. So just to summarize, we kind of feel that for synthetically designed interactions, you have to put in place additional risk management. You need to try and understand the broader context within which the platform is operating and identify how and where that might be a problem. The second thing is that you need to have sustained government protection where there is a validated demand. So if we see that the market is taking stuff up, there needs to be that longer term support just until a point where the business models themselves are absolutely sustainable. And the last element is that, and what we've seen here, is that there needs to be actual business model innovation to enable these conversations. The firms in South Africa that we've seen are very unwilling to engage with third parties, and they need to change their behaviors and their attitudes in order for this to be successful. I'm 30 seconds over, but I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, Davis, thank you very, very much for your informative talk. You are doing an amazing job in my view. And looking forward to come and see, because having 50 projects in 4 years, it's a hell of a work. Now, we open the floor to the questions of actually our participants. And as I can see, we have already 3 questions for you, Davis. I will start maybe with the third one that we can see in our screen. What are the constraints on engaging university professors in this triple helix interaction?
So particularly in the environment that we work in, and I think this will extend to certainly many African environments. I'm not entirely sure about other emerging markets, but there may be some parallels. The universities that exist within Southern Africa are primarily teaching universities. They are not research universities. And what this means is that it's very easy to engage with them, and they're very excited about dealing with the concepts. But because their focus is on actual teaching, learning, development of local students, there isn't nearly as strong of a research base and an output and commercialization basis as there is, for example, that you might see out of the US or Europe. So it's not really a challenge around engaging with them, but having them actively participate in crafting solutions is more difficult, simply because of the underlying agenda and purpose of our universities here.
Thank you for this. Allow me to go to the second question that we have from Hungary, if I can see well. Say that one does not fit all. You know, for example, your idea of innovation directions in Botswana may not be identical to the rest of Southern Africa. What is your answer to that?
So I think this is perhaps a very peculiar situation within South Africa. So without a doubt, South Africa is the overwhelmingly large player in Southern Africa. To give you some rough ideas, we probably account for 95% of the GDP in Southern Africa. If you sort of buy into the idea of dependency theory, there's a whole lot of work written about how South Africa is a bully for many other reasons in this environment. So yes, there is a major concern about how the innovation direction that is needed in different countries may not be identical to that of South Africa. The problem that we face here is that South African firms tend to dominate. So even if you look in Namibia or Botswana, it's our South African value chains that drive all the way in there. There are South African banks that function there, South African telcos that function there. So it's really our infrastructure that enables the broader environment. Now, personally, I don't think that's a good thing, but it is a fair reflection of what it is. So one of the challenges, and this is something that we actually faced directly in Namibia, was actual cultural pushback against the fact that we were a South African organization. I think one of the tricks is that technology is neutral. And if you are able to find a way to adopt and absorb technology without having to absorb the longer-term strategic directions and anything like that, you can take that and put it for your own benefit in the direction that suits you, rather than be captive to the direction of another environment or organization.
Now, because we receive many questions, but we have to keep the time, I will try to combine two, and there are a few more, Davis, but one of the questions, as you can see, number one is there any social engagement strategy that will empower society to drive triple helix co-creation? And also I have one question from Eric that says, trust is the biggest issue in these countries, and you seem like a strategist person. What you will actually advise us on that? How we can overcome the barriers and become catalysts?
Yes, I think that there is an increasing amount of work being done around building a social cohesion, not just within South Africa, but broadly. And this is often done within the context of other issues. I mean, South Africa has had major xenophobia issues over the last several decades. So in order for us to kind of build out this kind of broader collaboration, there's a lot of effort being put into city architecture, things like creating collaborative working spaces. There's a lot of attempts to from a government point of view, to encourage organizations, universities to more directly engage with end users. There's been a big uptick in the use of things like human-centered design principles, going out and actually validating concepts with different groups. So there's a lot of grassroots level development happening in order to build this. And I think that building trust is not something that can be achieved in the short term. It is a very, very long development process. that is done one step at a time. And I think that the only way to do it is to continue talking and engaging with people. And if we think of the networks that have been built around this, when we started, our network was, maybe in the sort of the several hundred people. We're now sitting with a network of 50-odd thousand. If you look at the events that are happening around innovation, technology, entrepreneurship, 5 years ago in South Africa, there was nothing. Now there are dozens of events happening continuously. So I think the grassroots process is building trust and is helping to promote interaction between all parties. And I think part of it is just that everybody sees the value of talking to everybody more and more. And so it's a very virtuous circle that that sort of is driving itself.
Thank you very much. It was very informative. We appreciate very much your time and effort from the Triple Helix Association. And now allow me to go to the next speaker. And Juha, the floor is yours, so you can start.
Thank you very much. I hope you guys can hear me. Very warm evening greetings from winterist Finland. I guess you might start wondering, what is the thing now? What does a Finn to do with the innovation in Southern Africa? I will try to explain that in a few moments. Basically, my presentation is about how the Triple Helix collaboration portrays in Southern Africa. What are the challenges and impediments, and on the other hand, what are the opportunities around TH collaboration and related to an emerging markets like countries in Southern Africa? And what could be done, what could be the key issues to strengthen the Triple Helix collaboration? I think that forms a part of my presentation this evening. A little bit about the content. I tried to put this into a context first and foremost. What is really the innovation challenge we are more or less facing in Southern Africa? And then my connection, so to speak, the Finnish connection to the Southern Africa, then we come to Southern Africa Innovation Support Program. I will try to briefly tell you what this program has been all about. Actually, Davis more or less remotely referred to our collaboration and to this program already. And my approach actually to this Triple Helix collaboration in making is a small survey that we did around size, this program I mentioned earlier, and I tried to somehow portray the picture of what kind of survey we did, and then I tried to focus more on the results and some of the interpretations around that survey. Then some kind of summary, and I hope we still have some time for a short discussion after that, after the summary. What is really the innovation challenge to be tackled in Southern Africa? Now, I'm also more or less excluding South Africa from this equation. Like Davis was saying, South Africa is a bit different story and is of course more advanced in innovation domain, if I put it shortly. But in rest of the Southern African countries, I think I would say that in whole sub-Saharan Africa, the economies are very much resource driven and they are focusing on primary products. That's of course the situation now. But on the other hand, all the countries seem to have their development plans, their Vision 2030 or whatever they call their plans, where they want to be industrialized and even knowledge and innovation driven countries. So I guess the words from the Prime Minister of Namibia pretty much tells the story of the whole region, in a sense that the innovation culture is not that strong. There hasn't been that much investment in innovation, and so to speak, the countries, they lack the environment for innovation. If you take, for example, the cross expenditure on R&D in those countries, it's something between 0.1 to 0.3. In South Africa it happens to be 0.7, and if I come back to north to Finland, it's 10 times more. And of course Finland is thought to be one of the innovation leaders in the world. So if out of our GDP we put 10 times more on innovation, I guess you can pretty much expect different kind of results on those investments. So there is definitely an innovation challenge to be tackled, and the countries, the development plans speak to those challenges and the issue that innovation should play much more pivotal and crucial role in development. I guess that's the starting point. Why did the Finns go to Southern Africa then? I've been working in Finnish innovation circles for last 15 years. Before I went to Southern Africa to run this exercise called Southern Africa Innovation Support Program, as we call it, SICE. And the whole aim in SICE was to set up systems and platforms for innovation. Actually, Davis, of course, gave you one example what we did with them around open innovation in some of the countries. So the whole idea was to strengthen the innovation ecosystem and to put place some practical platforms for implementing innovations. We've been busy with incubation spaces, we've been busy with technology transfer, etc. I will come back to those instruments in a moment. We have been executing the program in Botswana, Mozambique, Namibia, and Zambia. And South Africa has been our knowledge-sharing partner, so to speak. As I said, South Africa is of course more advanced and much bigger than any of these countries in that respect. And this has been, so to speak, a regional program. So the local development community, Southern Africa development community, has noted, and SICE has been part of the regional innovation agenda. I was there for almost 5 years as a chief technical advisor and team leader of this exercise, and those acronyms in the brackets refer to Botswana Innovation Hub, Mozambique ICT Institution, and Namibia Business Innovation Institute. Those institutes were our partners in running and carrying out this exercise. The whole exercise was more or less financed by the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of Finland. It has been part of our development collaboration and partnership with Southern Africa, with some 6.2 million euros. And I was based in Windhoek, Namibia, to carry on with SICE exercises. So that's how a Finn and Finland is engaged in Southern Africa innovation and triple helix exercises. From the very beginning, we thought that we need to get this triple helix collaboration, so to speak, ongoing, and we took a bit more broader or augmented triple helix approach, namely trying to get this general public or civil society, also NGOs, etc., more involved into this exercise. I don't want to go really into the specifics of why we did so, but one of the reasons were that we were dealing with development collaboration, and of course it was important to get the local community and NGOs and civil society involved into our exercises. Just to highlight a bit what kind of engagement we got from the institutions. I'm seeing that the numbers and are quite small, but it indicates that we have been engaging with hundreds of several institutions and companies coming from all sectors of the triple helix interaction space. So quite balanced representation from government, from academia, from private sector. Of course, we didn't reach that much the civil society for our exercises. We were busy with 4 key components. Of course, as we all know, innovation and triple helix collaboration relates quite a lot to networking and talking about what you are actually doing. So networking was one of the key features. We tried to even set up cluster-specific activities in some of the countries. Of course, we organized conferences, seminars and workshops where we tried to engage all the triple helix players and actors from the region and sometimes from specific countries. We organized a lot of capacity building exercises, like I said, incubation, technology transfer, and innovation policies, all those kind of things. And of course, one of the key issues which we focused and kept on the agenda was mobile application development. We had several regional projects, and actually the Regional Connect, which Davis mentioned earlier, was one of the regional projects we did fund. And by regional we meant that we had representation from at least 2 of our partner countries in all of those projects. And the 4th component was this regional aspect. We tried to strengthen and work together with the local development community and tried to set up kind of a regional innovation agenda. Of course, the aim was to get innovation more into the development picture, and of course the ultimate aim was to get governments involved and governments to invest more in innovation activities, and of course via that also to triple helix interactions and collaboration. That was size, and within size we did a small survey on how does the triple helix collaboration look like. Of course, my Finnish experience told me that this is one of the key success factors in being in the innovation space, and we did a small survey monkey thing, mainly focusing of course on our partner countries, but there are a few participants also from South Africa. But you see that the number of responses we got was some 126, quite evenly from all the countries. Of course, Namibia dominating a bit in our survey. This is just to highlight that we had a quite nice gender and age balance in our survey, so youngsters were quite evenly represented, also men and female, which is a bit surprising I would say in innovation domain. Normally and typically, even in Europe, it tends to be male dominated, but seemingly we have reached females quite nicely also for our survey, or in general one might also think that females tend to be more active than males, but let's say that we have been able to engage both genders quite evenly, so there shouldn't be any bias related to age and gender in our survey. Then we asked as a background information from which angle you come from the triple helix. So once again, all the three traditional helix sectors are pretty evenly represented. We didn't reach that much the civil society and NGO sector, of course, and that's the whole picture. It has been the whole picture within SAIS and within our work in Southern Africa. Of course, people tend to say that innovation is of course important, but I think as a background question, it also relates to the overall importance and growing importance of innovation in modern development and the aspirations of the regions and countries even in Southern Africa. So I guess it's not very surprising that most of the people I would say, of course, almost 90% of the people say that, or more than 80% of people say that innovation is very important seemingly for every organization. Of course, our survey can be a bit biased, that we tend to approach the people who are active in our program, and of course they are much more involved in innovation in general. But I hope at least that this is the overall picture of the whole region and the countries in general and overall. And then we asked, what do you think? How would you rate? Is this triple helix important for the development and for innovations? And once again, obviously, it seems that it's very important. I would say 2/3 of people say that innovation plays a key role, a crucial role in innovation and in development, of course, and in those aspirations to become an industrialized or knowledge-driven or even innovation-driven country. I guess it's quite obvious and kind of an understandable response in that sense. The next question was, actually we tried to get into the more specifically how much collaboration is going on and how much which actors are more kind of active in this sense. So seemingly it tells to me at least that slightly this collaboration is driven by academia and public sector, and I guess when I think in general of the phenomena, that is this triple helix, or does it tend to be more kind of a government driven in the very beginning, or is it a laissez-faire situation, or is it well balanced? So I would say that tends to be, at least from my experience in these emerging economies in Southern Africa, a little bit academia and public sector driven, and I think it reflects a bit what Davis was also referring and saying, that and cultural issues, maybe there is not that much of tradition in these kind of interactions from private sector. Of course, in his presentation, academia was not that present, but at least in our kind of a traditional triple helix collaboration, academia tends to be the key partner. And then when we were asking what are the key benefits, of course the kind of a thing was that people tend to believe that this kind of collaboration, of course, increases the quality of of innovations, and of course it accelerates the dissemination of new ideas and transmission of knowledge. But I think the kind of things we should put more focus on is to studying why people are saying that risk sharing among partners is not that important, and the cost factor is also not that important when it comes to triple helix collaboration. Seemingly, I still have few slides and few questions which we did ask, but I think I need to hurry a bit, and of course the presentation will be shared with you, and we can come back to more detailed analysis a bit later. The survey was done in late 2015, so I'm also kind of new to some of the nuances, and not really kind of in-depth analysis has not been carried out yet. What are the country-specific variances and variations, etc. But this is of course to give you kind of a general overview of triple helix in southern some southern African countries. What have been the key motivations? Of course, to access to increased capacity, access to new technologies. Of course, companies are keen on new technologies and improved processes and etc. So I think the increase in stock of kind of a scientific knowledge doesn't play that important role, so maybe it indicates that these are more kind of a practical issues which we are trying to raise and tackle in these kind of interactions. An important issue from our perspective was, of course, that is this triple helix collaboration really into making, and it seems that it's not really that well functioning in any of these countries. People tend to even strongly disagree, and specifically the issue that it's not well balanced. Of course, we would need to look more deeply into the issues, that who is then dominating, and who are the key players who are actually very active in the field, and I guess that's one of the things we would need to study a bit further, but people are definitely in the opinion that in general this model is a good one, and we should put more focus and try to keep the triple helix fire burning, of course, in southern Africa and in all of those countries. And key challenges, you start talking about strategic issues, not really innovation related strategies, policies, and not to talk about implementation. Instruments are not readily available. Of course, differing goals and expectations. Lack of financial resources, of course, that's always an issue, and it was an issue, of course, all along when we were executing size and rigid organizational structures. I guess those one can easily pick up, and of course, in many of the in all the occasions and when we are talking about triple helix in general in southern Africa, we start talking about trust and openness. But funny enough, I would say that people are not that worried about, for example, on stealing of ideas and how to protect the ideas and stuff like that. So that was a bit surprising for me, at least from the survey. And what are the key issues one should focus in the future? More policies are needed. Of course, new groups, networks, maybe clusters should be built up, and I guess the open innovation approach should be one of the key issues we should strive for. I guess people have realized that maybe science parks and big structures are not the issues for Southern Africa. We should do things in practice and focus on small things which we can carry out and execute in practice and more easily with a reasonable budget. Okay, just to summarize, I've gone already over my time. It seems evident that innovation should play a key role in development. Triple Helix is seemingly very relevant and applicable also in emerging economies, at least in Southern Africa, but there is a high belief and kind of appetite and eagerness for collaboration and interactions, but we need more tools, we need more programs, we need to kind of nurture this culture and find new ways for collaboration and get a bit more kind of a more balanced and of course more funded interactions ongoing. And from our point of view, we're going to continue this work in Southern Africa. Finland is about to start the second phase of SISE now in somewhere in mid-2016, a new 4-year program with some 12 million euros to be invested in this exercise, now comprising 6 countries besides the four original ones. Tanzania and South Africa will join on board. So in conclusion, quite interesting developments. I'm happy to share more of and more in depth the survey results. Of course, it would be kind of interesting to see how these kind of actions or interactions are carried out in maybe in Asia or in Latin America. And of course, for the future, it would be interesting to kind of work with the whole association and the Triple Helix community. I think we have a lot to do in Southern Africa in the coming years. I think I will stop here and hand over to the moderator. Thanks for having me this evening.
Juha, thank you very, very much. It was very good talk. Congratulations for all your hard work. Now we have, and of course we'll be in touch because offline I have also many questions, but now I will give the floor to the participants that we receive at least 7, so we have to stay overnight, but I will try to mix them. There are so many, but without leaving anything outside. Now, I would start with the thing that, first of all, I will start with question number 6, provocative, but also I have seen discussions and debates. If the technology transfer offices, they have done the job that they had to do, to be a good facilitators between university and industry. What is your view about that?
Okay, now I'm only talking about technology transfer offices in Southern Africa. Of course, we have experiences from Europe and all around the world. Once again, we have been only seeing the start and establishment of first technology transfer offices in I would say in all of these countries, and results remain to be seen, but they haven't been really that successful yet. It's very much in infant stage, and I guess the issue is, of course, with the deal flow, with the thing that how do we get appetite from the commercializations, from the licensing point of view. So I would say it hasn't been a bumpy or tricky road, but it's a bit too early to say how will it work in Southern Africa. But there is a lot of aspiration from the university side, and besides the kind of a relatively weak or kind of a not that much research-driven universities. I think they are quite eager nowadays also to put the research results onto commercialization or to technology transfer activities, so to speak. So it remains to be seen, I would say.
Okay. Because there are debates, as you know, in Europe that the technology transfer office, they didn't do the job that they should do. And this is something that is debatable. Now, allow me now to go to question number 3 and number 5 because I have to combine them. And as we know, in triple helix, in co-creation, in open innovation, society plays a major role. And here we have a question of how actually we can increase and how we can increase the engagement of the society to this.
Okay, I think you can do it in an official way. Of course, we always try to get them on board, but I would say that these open innovation exercises, and in Southern Africa we started to talk about much more on inclusive innovation, getting the communities involved into problem-solving issues, seeing them as a kind of a customers and also participants of the whole process, and of course NGOs and associations who more or less represent the community and civil society, they are much more aware of the role of innovation, and of course in the context of Southern Africa, it has a lot to do with awareness raising and evangelizing about innovation. I guess it starts from that, and then doing practical small things on the ground. That was my realization, of course, in general. I spent my first year trying to work with the strategy level, with the ministries and politicians, and then I went to do things on the ground.
Sometimes, you know, government sometimes is toxic, so it's better to work, you know, on the ground. Now, question number 1 of our participants is asking, is the size model is more focused on research-based economies, or it could be replicated in knowledge-based economies with increased societal appraisal? And he's talking about the impact that we can have, how we can maximize the impact.
I guess it's also applicable, of course. In a sense, I would say networking component, talking about clusters and membership-driven institutions where triple helix collaboration takes place, capacity building, projects on the ground, etc., etc. I think it's also applicable in a sense, I would say, in a more knowledge or innovation-driven economy or society. I guess the trend, the new paradigm up in North has been this open innovation and those kind of things, doing things on the ground, practice-based innovation. I think at least the big structures and collaboration in that sense is not the thing for any of societies or economies independent of their states. But I think this kind of I would say in general triple helix or this kind of a holistic collaboration model is completely applicable also in so to speak, all around North and South.
And here I have also another question, and that will be the last one. And how your model, your size model, could foster university-industry collaboration in South Africa. If you can give us some examples. And I have in parallel another participant that he said, do the governments require different models to improve academic to industry interactions rather than the traditional one? So also if you can change the role yourself and go to the government, you know, what you will say. If you...
Okay. What has actually been happening in South Africa, and what I would say that would be a kind of it was also our aspiration, at least it might be size aspiration in the second phase, to set up those centers of expertise. you focus on specific fields, whether it's bio, whether it's ICT, whether it's renewable energy. You set up those kind of centers of expertise very close to the academic institutions where the companies can join on a membership basis, or for that you have different kind of structures. But I would go into that direction. And of course, my own experience comes from Finland, where we used to run so to speak, membership-driven conglomerations. We called them clusters or whatever. Was it gaming? Was it open source or whatever? I think you need to set up programs, and government needs to start investing in these things. I think it's a key issue, and I'm seeing it more or less happening in South Africa. It's happening more or less in Namibia already. Also, it's starting to happen in all of these countries, so to speak. I think via programs, via those kind of instruments, I think government can play a key role, specifically engaging universities and so to speak, Euro or Rand is a good consultant also in innovation space. You have to put some seed funding in.
I remember now once you said that, I was in Finland in 2006. We had the IST conference, and at that time the commissioner Vivian Reding said in order to have innovation you need three things, and gave the example of Finland: education, education, education. So this is a very good point.
Yeah, that of course that's the backbone. You need skilled and educated people to be innovative, so to speak.
Okay, in order to be also on time, thank you very much, Juha. Allow me to conclude this webinar. So I would like to make the following key remarks. Open innovation requires co-creation among the triple helix stakeholders, and universities plays a key role. So in Europe now, for people, we know, but we don't talk anymore about research and development. We talk about research and innovation. Because without innovation, we could not have a growth. We could not have growth in our countries. We cannot have growth actually in our regions. So now the main two key stakeholders is university that provides knowledge, and of course industry that commercialize. So we have to make sure to find incentives, whatever other things, another model, as one of our participants said, in order to make sure the two main stakeholders, the university that provides knowledge, to take all that knowledge and commercialize it and let the industry play that role. So this is something that we should have in mind. Now, just to sum up, as it was pinpointed by the two presentations, regions in transition are in even more need of such co-creation in order to properly grasp their innovation potential and ensure growth on the long term. Juha's conclusion was actually the main bullets. Innovation should play a key role in development. Triple helix approach seems highly relevant and applicable also in emerging economies, and gave the example of Southern Africa context. He said that he high believes an appetite for triple helix collaboration and interaction as development tool. He also said that triple helix culture still in infancy phase, and that's why also we have this webinar to learn from each other, and collaboration and interaction is neither very advanced, balanced, and not well funded. Davis, on the other side, our first speaker, actually his main conclusion was that we need an enhanced risk management is required. We need a more sustainable governmental protection, and one of his other key points was business model innovation is needed to enable external conversations. At the end of the day, business model, if you don't know what is your business model, I think then it's an issue. Now, allow me to thank very much our speakers. First of all, our first speaker, Mr. Davis Cook, and also Dr. Juha Mittinen. Also, allow me to thank a big thanks to Mauro for his ICT support, and also Maria Laura for her continuous support for all related triple helix matters and logistics issues. And especially a big thank you to all of you, the participants, and we hope you enjoy the webinar. And now please stay online, because we will need you to fill up an evaluation and poll, because as we know, always there is a room for improvement. So if you can give us some feedback, we will try our next webinar to be much better. And if you have any ideas for future webinars that will be interest to you and to your society, feel free to send me an email and we will try to provide that to you. So thank you all, and please stay online to fill up the poll. So thank you very much, all of you.